It's Thursday, October 16th, and this is your second TNM Sports podcast. TNM Sports, just a couple of guys hanging out talking about everything that's going on in the world of sports today. This week we're starting off with NFL. Looking at the Panthers tie from the past year. Are the Cowboys for real? Manning's closing in on yet another record. And last second heroics from Green Bay. Looking at some college football. Previewing the weekend in the ACC. Kind of strange to say, huh? Big weekend in the ACC for football. Final four mid-season picks. And the people that we have in there may not be who you think. And also a big weekend in the Big 12. And then we're going to close out with some MLB. Royals sweep. The Royals, Matt, are going to the World Series. For the first time in our lifetime, the Royals are going to the World Series. And the Giants are on the verge of clinching yet another World Series appearance. Also, we'll have NFL Week 7 picks with a special guest picker with us in the studio today. First off, let's talk NFL. Panthers tie. I personally think that this tie will help them win the division. I'll tell you why later. But, Matt, what stood out the most to you about this game?
I think it was the offense mainly. The way they played, specifically Cam. Being back to the old Cam, he had 112 yards rushing, a touchdown on the ground, 2 passing touchdowns. He was just, he had a couple misses, he had a pick, yes, but he was about as good as you're going to see Cam get, and he had one of his best games in the NFL. And that in turn, him having a good game in turn made our offense have a good game. We put up 37 points, which I think shocked both of us because we both said if the Panthers are going to win, or in this case tie at all, it's going to be a low-scoring game. And that wasn't the case, so they were able to put points up when the defense wasn't playing as well. And that's another thing that stood out to me was just why is the defense that was so good last year struggling more specifically in the first half? That's something that I'm sure we'll talk about, and something that the coaching staff has to talk about, because I thought that they improved the defense in the off season, when in fact it's gotten worse. So that's something that I think we definitely need to figure out. But we can't harp on this, or they can't harp on this tie, and they got to get back to work. Packers coming up, it's a big game. Aaron Rodgers is playing really well. So we got to get back to work, and I think they will. I think that our defense, led by Luke Kuechly and Thomas Davis, will rally back and realize that they hadn't been playing well in the first half. And not even that well in the second half, but they did have a couple picks. But I think they'll realize that, and I think that we are on the right track, even though it did end in a tie. So there was definitely some positives to come out of this tie. Obviously, you want to win, but a tie is better than a loss, in my opinion. So.
For sure. And, for me, again, like you said, what stood out the most was Cam just showing out, 29 of 46 for 258 yards and 2 touchdowns. The one pick that was a terrible throw across the middle. You kind of left your receiver out to dry. Luckily, that receiver was a 6'5" monster in Kelvin Benjamin. To answer your question about the defense, I think offenses have just have adjusted this year. The quick release is a lot more prevalent this year. Sacks across the board are down. That was one area that the Panthers defense really excelled last year, was getting pressure on the quarterback. But when the quarterback's only holding the ball for 2.5, 3 seconds, that's saying Hutt catching the snap and throwing it. And so I think that's why you're seeing higher scoring games. It was encouraging to see the Panthers offense score 37 points. They've scored 35 plus the past 2 games, which, if you told me that that the Panthers were going to go into Cincinnati and score 37 points, going into that game, I would have said it would have been a blowout. But the defense, they're not getting as much pressure on the quarterback. I think they're trying a little too hard to swarm the ball. That's why you're seeing those big rushing gains, like in the Pittsburgh game, like against Cincinnati. They're getting gashed, and it's because your linebackers are over pursuing. and getting caught up. They're not playing solid, responsible gap football. Everybody's wanting to make the big play and do too much, and that is causing them to overshoot and leaving these gaps wide open. When you've got a back like Giovanni Bernard that's patient, or like Le'Veon Bell that's patient, they're going to see that and they're gonna eat it right up. So you can't let the double teams on these crackdown blocks. You can't let them totally wipe you out, and that's what Luke and AJ Klein and some of the other linebackers are doing. So I think they just need to take a page out of Aaron Rodgers' book, relax. You're still a top flight defense, but you've got to start playing like it. Another area where the defense is struggling this year compared to last year is in the red zone. Last year they were the second best team in the second best defense in the red zone. This year I think I saw a stat they were like 25th. Now if you would have told me that the Panthers would be giving up 10 out of 13 trips to the red zone would be a touchdown, I'd have looked at you like you were crazy. But again, that goes back to the quick release pass game being big and not playing good solid gap responsibility. And another thing that I really am personally seeing that's hurting this defense is missing the big man on the outside, Greg Hardy. I mean, how big is that loss, looking at it a couple weeks into this suspension? And who knows if he's going to be back. I mean, yeah, they've got Mario Addison, they got Coney Ely. You still got Johnson on one side, but I mean, I think I said this last week, but I'll say it again. Greg Hardy being out for this team causes teams to be able to tee off on Charles Johnson. And or double team Star or double team, any of the big guys in the middle. And when that's happening, Greg Hardy would be getting one-on-one blocking and just eat tackles alive. So I think missing Greg Hardy's been really key to getting that pressure on the quarterback as well. Going into the game, it's always tough to play in Lambeau Field. I think the Panthers are going to have to score in the 30s to beat Green Bay because, Aaron Rodgers is going to get his, especially with a secondary like the Panthers, which I feel like they've upgraded. Look at Roman Harper. He's got, 3 or 4 interceptions already. And that was a big pickup. I was kind of on the fence about that, but that's been a big pickup. My boy Robert Lester got promoted. He's back. I've been a huge Robert Lester fan since he came out of Alabama. The guy knows how to win. So look for number 38 in the backfield or in the defensive backfield. And also give the guy a follow on Twitter. He's kind of an interesting follow. So I'm excited about having Robert Lester back off the practice squad. And hope that good things come from that. I guess we'll have to see what these other receivers have. It's looking like KB's not going to be playing this week, but Cam distributed the ball well on Sunday. He got the ball to 8 different receivers and was distributing the ball extremely well. So I'm anxious to see how Cotchery and those guys will step up and your boy Brenton Burson. It seems like every time there's it's a third and short, and it's a key situation, that's who winds up getting this call. And I think he's earning Cam's trust. He's a hard worker, and you're just excited to see the hometown kid playing for his hometown team, and he's not putting up eye-popping stats or anything, but he's getting out there and making it happen. So. If KB is out, those guys are going to have to step up. But, the more I see this receiving core, the more I think that the Panthers made the right decision in making that switch. So, switching gears a little bit. Oh, one more thing about the Panthers. This tie really helped them out. The last 4 teams that had a tie in the regular season clinched a playoff berth on a virtue of a tiebreaker by half of a game. And what I mean by that is, look at the Packers last year. They finished 8-7-1, and the Bears finished 8-8. The Packers won the division, the NFC North, because they had less losses than the Bears. So, come December, January, if the Panthers are sitting there at 10-5-1, or 9-6-1 or whatever, and they're tied in the win column with the Saints or with the Falcons, who I don't think will be there, but they may, that will ultimately help them out. With that being said, and looking at Rivera's post game comments about that, do you think on 4th and 1 in overtime, you've got Cam who's been running the ball, you got your quarterback can pick up a very probably easy first down? Did Ron make the right decision by playing it safe, going for the tie with that in mind? Or should the Panthers have went for it and went for the win?
I think you absolutely go for the win there. I mean, looking back on it, yes, if he wouldn't have got it, game over, game over because it's an overtime. And then Panthers fans were sitting here talking today about a 34-37 loss, and all the Panthers fans will be up in arms probably, wanting to get rid of some of the coaching staff. You know how that goes. So, but I think you go for it. I mean, you got Cam, like you said, he had just gotten a 4th and 1 earlier in the game, not just before that. And I just think you got the big man running like he is. I think you got to give him a shot. Because, I mean, really, and we could have still lost the game, even though, we didn't in the end. I mean, you could argue that Nugent had a fairly easy field goal to beat us anyway. And so just kicking a field goal and giving the ball back to them with that amount of time on the clock, with the way our defense is playing, I think you go for a touchdown and ice it. We score there, game over, we win. But it's easy for me to sit here and say that when you're Coach Rivera with, having to worry about, maybe not your job, but you have to worry about, getting wins and losses and taking the heat. I can sit here all day and say that because I don't have to take any heat for what happened. But, I mean, I can see why he kicked it. I mean, but personally, me, sitting here at least, I would have went for it. But if I was coaching, that would have been a tough decision. I'm sure that he, thought about it. He's Riverboat Ron, so I'm sure he thought about it. And ultimately, he may have made the right decision. I mean, we'll never know. But personally, I would have liked to see him go for the win.
You always want to go for the win. I think back to even when I was in high school, some coaching decisions in that similar situation, playing for overtime versus going for the win in regulation and things like that. And, you always want to coach to win. And I kind of got the vibe there. He was coaching not to lose that game. But I think you've got to do that because, you go for it on 4th and 1 and you don't make it. Your fan base is up in arms. You're crucified in the media. And now, like I said, this tie could ultimately help them out. If the division is a close race come January. And so you play. It's kind of like in soccer. You play for the points. In the World Cup, your draw is 1 point versus 3 points for a victory. And so you want to get something out of that game. It's weird. It's awkward. It leaves you disappointed as a fan because you want to see someone win. But at the end of the day, it wasn't a loss, and you're still above 500, and you're still leading the division. And so the Panthers ultimately at this point through 6 games control their destiny. You keep winning and keep winning the division games and take care of your business, and you're going to be back in the playoffs. And that, as everything kind of starts over once you get in the playoffs. Speaking of playoffs, one of the biggest surprises this season for me is the Cowboys being 5-1. How they went to Seattle, which blew my mind.
Which we said couldn't be
we
done.
said could not be done. So I guess we're eating a little crow on that one. Went to Seattle, bloodied the Seahawks' nose, punched them in the mouth, beat them at their own game, left with a win. Statistically, the Cowboys' defense is just as bad as it was last year, if not worse. But they figured out, hey, let's get the ball into the hands of DeMarco Murray, let him carry us, and our crappy defense can just stay on the sidelines. With that being said, Matt, is Dallas for real?
I guess it's how you define for real. Do I think they'll make the playoffs? probably. I mean, they're looking pretty good, but you gotta think, you got the Eagles sitting right there too. I think with the same record. And my only concern is, like you said, I think they rely too much on their running back. DeMarco Murray is a fantastic running back, but as the season goes on, is he going to wear down because he's taking so many, so many carries and stuff like that? Is he going to wear down? What happens if he has a bad game? Because he has yet to have a bad game. I think he's rushed for over 100 yards in every game. So he's yet to have a bad game. So what happens to the Cowboys when he has a bad game and it's on, Tony Romo's shoulders in the fourth quarter? And I know he had that one fourth quarter drive where he led them to a field goal. But let's be honest, Dez Bryant won them that game. He made a fantastic catch on that fourth and I think 22 or something crazy like that. And so I trust the Cowboys, I guess you could say, but I don't trust Tony Romo in late game situations where it's not going to be able to run the ball with DeMarco Murray. It's going to have to be on his shoulders. And I definitely do not trust him in the playoffs. So if I had to pick right now for them to make the playoffs, I'd say they probably would. Because their division still ain't that hard. You got the Eagles there, and the Giants are better, but they're not as good as I thought they were gonna play this week. They didn't look that great, and so I think they'll make the playoffs. Probably win their division, maybe get a wild card, but I don't see them going much farther than the first or second round of the playoffs. I don't see them, and maybe not even making the playoffs. It just depends on how their whole season depends on how DeMarco Murray's health holds up, and if it fails them, do you think that Tony Romo can carry them? I don't. He hasn't ever proven that to me. But for right now, with the way they're playing, and they just went to the Super Bowl champions and beat them, which, like we said wouldn't be done. We didn't think it could be done, especially by the Cowboys. So you can't really say they're not for real after they did that. But they still got some proving to do for me.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and Romo is the biggest question mark for me. Statistically, his numbers are off the charts, and they are almost every year. He's always in that top 5, 10 in passing yards and things like that. But they're kind of like the Chargers, and I can say the same. I'll say the same thing about the Chargers and the Cowboys. What have you done for me in December? What have you done for me in January? And 5-1 in September and October is always strong. I mean, almost being undefeated is always strong, especially in the NFL. That's hard to do. But I can't trust Tony Romo in a big game situation. I mean, the past 2 years, going into Week 17, all the Cowboys had to do was win, and they were in the playoffs. 2 years.
Couldn't do it.
And they couldn't do it. And as well, the Cowboys haven't done anything in 20 years. And, they seem to have the formula, the age-old formula of do enough on defense, run the ball, control the clock, you're going to win the game. But what happens if, like you said, Murray goes down? I personally think that the Cowboys are going to win the East, and that's kind of weird to say. I think they will win their division just because Philadelphia is too up and down. The Giants are too streaky.
But they win games.
Same
record.
They have the same record, but you look at going to that big NFC West team, Philadelphia gets dominated. And so just based off of what I've seen through 6 weeks, I like the Cowboys to win their division. Again, come playoff time, I don't know how far they'll go. But I think you've got to consider them a contender at least to win their division right now. And then, like I said, once the playoffs come, it's whoever's playing the best ball and whoever's hot at the time. Switching from America's old team to, in the recent poll, America's favorite team, the Denver Broncos. Peyton's closing in on Brett Favre's record. Needs 3 touchdowns this weekend versus San Francisco to hit 509 and break that record that really hadn't been set for 5 years?
Yeah.
A record that stood for a while when Brett Favre broke it. But you gotta like the Sheriff in this situation. I think that he will break it, even though San Francisco's defense has only allowed 3 touchdown passes, a quarterback to throw 3 touchdown passes in a game twice since 2012. But you gotta like Peyton Manning. I mean, look at what the Jets did last week. And I think they played it well until Peyton was Peyton Manning and figured it out. But the Jets were only rushing 3 guys and dropping 8 in the coverage. They were daring the Broncos to run the ball. But yet Peyton Manning still found a way to get 3 touchdowns. His yardage wasn't as great. I mean, it was over 300 yards, but it wasn't like a huge game. I think the Niners take kind of a page out of that book, drop more into coverage than they normally would because Peyton's going to get the ball out in about 2 seconds. But I think he gets the record this weekend. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, he'll get it. I mean, he'll probably get in the first half, knowing him, because he knows that record's there. I mean, everybody's talking about it. All the receivers know about it, and they're playing hard for him. Not to take anything away from him, but you hear the wide receivers talking. Well, no, I'm going to catch it. No, I'm going to catch the ball. Everybody wants to catch the ball that Peyton Manning throws. His 500 touchdown, and then now I'm sure his 509 where he breaks Brett Favre. And so I wouldn't be surprised to see him do it in the first half. Maybe not, but he'll do it. I'd say by the end of the third quarter he'll have it done, and it would be more of a shock to me if he didn't get it this week. With I think Monty Ball still out, if I'm not mistaken, then they're gonna have to pass the ball more, and they already pass it like all the time. So I don't really know if you can say pass it more, but they're gonna have to rely on Peyton Manning's shoulders, and I think he'll get it done.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I definitely think he'll break it this weekend. I think personally, Julius Thomas is going to be the one that gets it. He's seeming to become Peyton's go-to guy. I mean, he's scored how many touchdowns so far? Like 10 or 12 touchdowns already through 6 games. I mean, it's just unbelievable what this guy's putting up, which is in turn causing his value to go up on FanDuel. Thanks a lot, Peyton. But I mean, you gotta like Peyton in this to get the record, and like you said, the friendly competition between the receivers on who wants it. I think that Julius Thomas gets the 509 catch. He might get 508 as well. Who do you think will get it, Matt?
I don't know. I kind of like Demaryius Thomas there. He's kind of, you can't really go wrong with any of the wide receivers. Sanders or Welker even though he hadn't really played that well since his suspension, which hurt my fantasy team. But I benched him this week, so I hope he doesn't get it because that'll make me look stupid. But I think it'll be Demaryius Thomas. I think he's starting to play better, and I think Peyton will try to get it to him. But honestly, Peyton probably doesn't care.
That's true. There's a quote from Peyton, and we're going to wrap this up. There was a quote from Peyton last week or the week before. It was whenever he broke the 500 mark, and he said, most of my touchdowns have been in situations to help my team win. They haven't been in garbage time. They haven't been in meaningless games. They've been in big games to help his team win. And so I don't think Peyton's as focused on it as the media is. I think he knows it's there, but this guy is able to compartmentalize and be so focused on the task at hand. He's definitely going to get it. And, statistically, he's probably one of the best quarterbacks of all time. Speaking of, in my opinion, the best quarterback in the game right now, Aaron Rodgers does what Aaron Rodgers does, leads the last second drive against the Dolphins for them to win, for the Packers to win a big game, setting them up for a big showdown against the Panthers this weekend. What do you think that the Panthers need to do to slow down Aaron Rodgers in this offense?
Well, I think the main thing, this is kind of don't have to do with Aaron Rodgers, is just don't wake a sleeping giant. And what I mean by that is Eddie Lacy's not doing too good. So, he's itching to have another big game. He had a big game a couple weeks ago, but other than that one game, he's really not done much. I saw, a couple stats where he's way down from his rookie year. So he is itching just to find a defense that'll finally let him have a breakthrough game. And, the Panthers haven't proven to me with their run defense that they won't be that team. And so, when he gets going, he's one of the best running backs in the game. I picked him over Marshawn Lynch in my fantasy draft, which is now biting me a little bit. But you don't want him going off like he can. And wrapping up and tackling is going to be a big thing there. He can break tackles, and that's one thing we've just been weak at tackling. I mean, obviously, Aaron Rodgers is kind of going to have his game. I don't think we can slow him down, but I don't think we can stop him. It's just going to be containing that running game, making sure Lacey keeps on slacking, and not letting their offense be two-dimensional. Make Aaron Rodgers make the plays, and that's going to be how we stop him. And we still might not can. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I agree. I think you've got to bend but don't break. Yeah, you can give up all the yardage in the world, but you've got to bend but not break. And so, I mean, Nelson's going to get his, Randall Cobb's going to get his, but limit the big plays and just try to get them to settle for field goals. And I think that's the way to beat this team. All right, switching gears to college football. Switching gears to college football. ACC, big weekend in the ACC this weekend. You've got in the ACC Coastal Division, Duke versus University of Virginia. Basically, this game will be for the division title as of right now if both teams win out. Virginia is the only undefeated team in the Coastal Division left. And Duke's only got that one loss, that devastating loss at Miami a couple of weeks ago, coming off of a big win in Atlanta. First time they've beat Georgia Tech in Atlanta since 1994. First time they've actually beaten Georgia Tech at all since 2003. So it's nice to kind of get that monkey off of Duke's back. But what stands out the most to you, Matt, about the Duke versus Virginia game, and what do you think, and who do you think is going to pull out the win on Saturday?
I haven't really watched that much Virginia this year, but I have seen some highlights where they've played really well. I think their only losses to BYU, if I'm not mistaken, and that was UCLA. Yeah, sorry. And UCLA is a good team. I think they beat BYU or something. They played BYU. And so, but obviously I've watched a good bit of Duke. And I think that, if Duke just keeps doing what they're doing, they can definitely win that game and ultimately win the Coastal Division. Their defense has been stellar all year long for the most part. Even in that game that they lost, the defense was spot on, better than I thought they would even play, and the offense just couldn't get nothing going. The center and quarterback were never in sync. 3 snaps over the head of Boone, and that just goes back on both of those. But playing a good Virginia team this week, we're definitely going to have to I think we can stop their offense. I think our defense can, but we're going to have to score points. And if we can get our offense moving, I think we will get the win this week and hopefully earn some respect that they deserve. I feel like being 5-1, I think they deserve a little bit more respect than they get, even though, before Saturday they hadn't really beat anybody. I think Georgia Tech was a statement win. Like you said, going to Georgia Tech, beating that option offense that we've struggled, their defense has struggled with, was huge. And I think that they can win this game if their offense shows up, and if not, Virginia is a very good team and they can very well win it too. So
yeah, this game is big. Virginia's 4-2 with losses to UCLA and BYU. Duke's 5-1. The only team they lost to is Miami. I'm looking at the schedules right here, and I mean Duke's got more of a favorable schedule to be able to run the table if they can get past Virginia. They got Virginia, then they go to Pitt, to Syracuse at home, and then they finish the season with 3 straight home games versus Virginia Tech, North Carolina, and Wake Forest. Whereas Virginia still has a matchup with Georgia Tech. They still have a matchup with Florida State, and they still have a matchup with Georgia Tech. Let me get their schedule pulled up here. So I think the game's bigger for Duke than it is for Virginia, because I think Virginia is obviously going to lose to Florida State. So I don't know if Virginia can beat win at Georgia Tech or at Va Tech. Virginia has beaten Richmond. They did beat Louisville, which was a pretty impressive win at the time. Look at how Louisville showed out against Clemson last week. They beat Kent State and they beat Pittsburgh. So you could say neither team has really faced a lot of stiff competition, and when they did, they lost. But at this point in the season, it's nice to be at the midway point and control your own destiny. So we're going to switch gears again a little bit within this college football thing and talk about the college football playoff. We're at that halfway point, and it is utter chaos, to say the least, in college football. You've got 5 undefeated teams sitting at the top of the top 25. You've got Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Florida State, Baylor, and Notre Dame. The huge game in Tallahassee this weekend, with 2 quarterbacks who have only lost 1 start combined. Unbelievable. You've got Florida State and Notre Dame squaring off in Tallahassee. So that's going to knock one of those teams out. So that's going to leave you with 4 undefeated teams. If everyone wins out, barring any upsets. Ole Miss and Mississippi State still have to play each other, so there goes another one. So that means if Baylor, that leaves Baylor, the winner of Ole Miss, Mississippi State, barring they win out, and Florida State, if they win out, as your undefeated. Then under that top 5, you've got 15 one-loss teams. You got a big weekend for the Big 12. You got 4 of those top 15 teams squaring off in TCU versus Oklahoma State and Oklahoma University of Oklahoma versus Kansas State. Kansas State's only loss was that tough loss to Auburn, and so. For me personally, I'm looking at the polls as they stand right now. I'm a big fan of Mississippi State. I just get that vibe that it's their year. I look at the Auburn in 2010 with Cam Newton as the quarterback. I look at those Florida teams with Tebow as their quarterback. Even some of the years that Alabama won it, you got the vibe, and even Florida State last year, you got the vibe that it's their year. I don't see anybody beating Mississippi State. They've still got a big matchup against Alabama. But I like Mississippi State to run the table and make it to the Final Four. I like Baylor. I don't see anybody left on their schedule that's going to take them down. The Big 12 is pretty solid this year up at the top. Like I said, they've got 5 of the top 15 teams right now. But Bryce Petty and that offense, I really like Baylor. To run the table and make that playoff. Florida State, I don't see anybody beating them if they can get past Notre Dame this weekend, and as long as Jameis stays eligible. You got a lot of distraction going on around that guy, but as long as they can keep him on the field, the kid's able to just block everything out and just ball. The kid's a competitor, and personally, I think Florida State's going to run it. And then Oregon, man, they had that tough loss against Arizona the other week on a Thursday night. Oregon always seems to drop that one game. But if things play out the way that I think they will play out, that's going to require Alabama to have to lose again. Auburn's going to have to lose again. Ole Miss will have to get beat. So those SEC teams are just going to start knocking themselves out. And Oregon's sitting at 9 right now, or it's kind of like in a prime position just to make that leap. Barring they take care of their business and win out as well. So I got Mississippi State, Baylor, FSU, Oregon. I like a Mississippi State versus Florida State championship game. And, man, I think if Florida State gets there, I see them repeating. So I'm going with the Seminoles, man. They're going to run the table again.
Yeah, and I'm with you for the most part on that. Florida State, like you said, as long as they can get past this week, which I think they will, there ain't nobody gonna touch them in the ACC, even in the championship game where they're playing Duke or Georgia Tech or Virginia or someone like that. I think that's the teams in that division that could play them in the championship game. But I don't see anybody beating them, barring Notre Dame comes out and balls this week and somehow beats them. But they didn't impress me last week, so I'm with you on that one. Again, Oregon, like you said, I don't really see anybody beating them. Um, you know, I'm my biggest fear for this playoff, and I love it. I love the playoff. I think it should be 8 teams, but I love the idea of the playoff. My biggest fear is that 2 SEC teams is going to get in there, and I just because the way I see it shaking out is um, Mississippi State, Georgia in the SEC championship game, and I think Georgia, if they have Gurley, that is if they have Gurley, winning that game. If not, I don't see them beating Mississippi State. But if they have Gurley, I could easily see them beating and winning the SEC, and then them getting into the Final Four. And I'm just afraid that if that happens, then the committee's going to look at it and say, well, you got this stacked other side of the SEC that has all these teams, one loss or teams that played hard schedules all year. Let's put one of them in, and I really don't want to see that happen because I just don't feel like in the playoff. I think you want to see 4 different conferences represented, and I'm with you on Baylor too. I mean, I don't see anybody beating them. I thought TCU would get them. I have picked Baylor going in, but it looked like for a while there TCU was gonna beat them and then kind of make their case to be in the Final Four. But so I have Baylor, Florida State, Oregon, and then Georgia in my Final Four, which is kind of my sleeper pick is Georgia. Gurley's good. I mean, I don't think, and that's everybody knows that. Best running back, maybe best player in the nation. You can't stop him. I mean, they did lose to South Carolina, but it was on a kind of questionable call, which you can't base one call on a whole game, but it was questionable, very close game, and they lost. It was I think road game, or was it? I don't think it was on the road. I'm not positive on that. In the SEC, that's going to be tough. So I mean, they did lose one game, but I see Georgia kind of, if they can, the way they looked against Missouri without Gurley really stood out to me. And I think if they get Gurley back, I could easily see them, win the SEC and make it to that Final Four. And so, I guess my championship game, yeah, it's hard. I see Baylor maybe making it with that offense they got. If they play somebody like Oregon in the Final Four, if it's Oregon and Baylor, I could see Baylor win that game, and then Florida State maybe beating Georgia, and like you said, with Jameis Winston at the helm, I don't see anybody really beating him. I think, even if he don't look great in games, he gets the job done, and I think if he's in another national championship game, he will find a way to get it done, and I see him repeating. But like you said, it's a real jumbled at the top, and really any of those teams up at the top could get it. Somehow Notre Dame pulls the upset, then all of a sudden you got to put them into the Final Four because they'd probably win out, and so then what? So, but for right now, I'll stick with my Final Four prediction and my championship game prediction.
For sure, for sure. One thing that you said about the SEC getting 2 teams in, I think the only way that's possible is if a Georgia or, well, I mean, the only other one-loss team in the SEC East is Kentucky, and I don't see them doing anything. So if Georgia's a wild card here, if Georgia wins the SEC championship, they're sitting there with 1 loss. You're going to have a 1-loss team in the playoff, period. I mean, obviously they're going to take it if they win it. But then you got to shift gears and look at it this way. If one of the teams from Mississippi doesn't win out, then you're going to have 2 1-loss teams in the playoffs. And so why not make it be that team from the SEC West if it's Mississippi or Mississippi State? I mean, both of them had to beat Alabama and Auburn. Both of them had to beat Texas A&M. And then the one other team had to beat the other one. and who could potentially both be undefeated going into the last week of the season. So, I mean, the case for Mississippi or Mississippi State, if they don't win the SEC to make the playoff, is strong. I hate seeing it. I hated back in the BCS era when Alabama and LSU played for the national championship for the second time and, you know, all that stuff. But, I mean, if the team from the SEC West does not win and Georgia winds up somehow winning the SEC, it'd be tough to keep one of those guys out. All right, on to the next topic. Major League Baseball. Say it with me. The Royals are going to the World Series. That's right. This is not a misprint. The Kansas City Royals are going to the World Series. And they did it the way the Royals have been doing it. You know, hitting the ball and scoring runs and things like that. You know, last night in their 2-1 win over the Orioles, they scored. Did you know they scored those 2 runs without the ball ever leaving the infield? Infield single, hit by a pitch, sacrifice bunt, sacrifice bunt to get runners on second and third, and a throw in air on a play at the plate. 2 runs without the ball leaving the infield.
That's impressive.
You know, they haven't lost a game in the postseason. I think 8 games is the longest win streak ever in the history of Major League Baseball. You know, I thought the Orioles were going to get them, but man, you've got these Royals are fun to watch, and you gotta like the hot team going into the World Series. How far do you think that these Royals can win versus the Giants or the Cardinals?
You know, I think to say they couldn't win would be absurd at this point. They've proven all of their haters wrong. Up until this past series against the Orioles, I didn't pick them to win. And I don't think, I mean, I picked them to win on last podcast. I picked them to win in 5. I thought that they would sweep at home and get 1 at the Orioles. I didn't see them sweeping the whole series, but they did. You know, even going back to the wild card game, you know, I don't think anybody really picked them to win. I mean, you had John Lester on the mound, usually good in big games, and he was pretty good up until I think it was the 8th inning where he gave up all those runs. But one thing that sticks out to me about the Royals is this. They turn the game into 6 innings. If you don't have the lead after 6, you're probably not going to beat them. Their bullpen, from their 7th, 8th, and 9th guys in the bullpen have been stellar, shut down. And when you trim a game to 6 innings and you're an offense and you go, I got to score within the first 6 innings or I'm probably not scoring, then that puts a lot of pressure on you. That's what they've been doing well. Like you said, they play small ball and even added some home runs in that they hadn't been getting in the regular season. And so they're very impressive. My only question mark would be this. They get in the World Series against a Giants team or even a Cardinals team if they are able to turn it around and win that series. And they lose game 1 to a big name starter or game 2 or something. How do they bounce back from that? How does that young team say, okay, we're down 1-0 or we're down 2-1 in the World Series that we've never seen before. We've never been in this situation. Before this year, we've never been in the playoffs, a lot of us. We haven't never felt what it feels like to lose in the playoffs. How do they respond if they fall behind in the series? And, you know, looking at it, it's looking like I picked the Cardinals last week, but it's looking like that the Giants will probably win that series. You know, they have, now they're up 3-1. It's like an 87% chance of them winning. Now, I'm not saying they're going to win, but they have a pretty good chance. And, you know, how about that? How about that being the 2 wild card teams fighting all the way to the World Series? Does that, in your opinion, show that not only is momentum key, but that one extra game of momentum that carries you in and you're on that high that you've won that win or go home game where so much is at stake? How does that help you in the playoffs, if any?
Well, you've got to like momentum and confidence, especially for a young team like the Royals. You know, not only did they win that game, they were down by 4 runs in the 8th. or more runs against John Lester and the A's who seemingly were my midseason World Series pick. It definitely gets momentum. It builds that excitement. And so yeah, it definitely helps your team out. I love the fact that MLB's done that. I think that at first I was like, a 1-game playoff, that's kind of crazy. Make it a series, but man, it sure is fun to watch. It's very exciting, and to see the wild card team doesn't make the playoffs or make the World Series a whole lot. I think that the Royals are just the 4th AL wild card team to make the World Series, the last being the 2004 Red Sox, and we know what happened there. But I really like the wild card playing game because it gives a team that that fought their butt off to get there, like the Royals did. They had to fight up until the last day of the regular season to clinch their playoff spot. It gives them the opportunity to win a game, get those butterflies out of the way, and just get that ball rolling. And so I love it personally. Talking about the Giants, they are on the verge of clinching tonight. They got Madison Bumgarner on the mound. The kid from Caldwell County has just been phenomenal. He's got a 0.76 ERA in 3 starts this postseason. 0.76. He's 1-0 with he hadn't given up a run in the NLCS. So I think that the Giants take it tonight. You put your ace out there with a chance to win it. You clinch when you can because looking back at 2004, look what happened to the Yankees. Look at 2007. The Red Sox were down 3-1 to Cleveland and came back. And I know it sounds biased, but I mean those are the 2 biggest MLB comebacks that I can remember. I don't remember any other 3-1 type things. But you go out there, you close the door when you can, because who's to say if you let St. Louis creep back in tonight, that they're going to that they're going to get that momentum. The series goes back to St. Louis. Anything can happen. And so you slam the door. And in theory, you could still start your ace on game 1 on Tuesday night in Kansas City. And so I think you ride your horse that got you there, and I think Bumgarner did. And I think that the Giants closed the door tonight, and they're popping champagne in St. Louis like they did in Kansas City last night. One question, because this has been something that's been on my mind that's kind of bothered me this offseason. Then we're going to get to our NFL picks, so we'll keep this short. What do you think about all the champagne popping? I mean, yeah, the teams are doing it when they win the wild card. They're doing it when they clinch a playoff spot. They're doing it for basically every single thing that's playoff related. Personally, do it when you win the pennant. Do it when you win the World Series. You won a wild card game. Congratulations, you made the playoffs. But don't pop champagne because you clinched a playoff spot. Do it when you win a pennant. Do it when celebrate then. What do you think?
I agree with that. I think that you get too excited about winning a wild card game. While it's great, you've done nothing. In the long run, who's going to remember the wild card winner if they didn't go on to win the pennant and win stuff? Now, this year might be an exception where both wild card teams get in and you'll remember that they were the wild card team. But honestly, say the Giants would have lost, to the Cardinals in this series, which they still could. Who would remember the wild card teams? I think, and especially like you said, even when they clinch the division or something in the regular season, you've done nothing. Look at the Nationals. I mean, they were probably the favorite for a lot of people in the NL coming in, and they came in. They were popping champagne. I think it was in Atlanta when they clinched. I might be wrong, but I think I'm correct on that. I think they both did. But anyway, wherever they clinched and they're popping champagne and all those young players are getting excited thinking that they did something when in essence they hadn't done anything. They lost in the first round. So who's going to really remember them? So I agree with you on that one. So now I think we're going to our NFL picks. And we've already talked about it a little bit. Green Bay and Panthers play. We've already kind of talked about that one a lot, so I'll just go ahead and give you my prediction. I think it's going to be 17-14, and I think that the Panthers pull it out.
Yeah, I like the Panthers in this. I think that Rodgers is going to get his, but I think the Panthers pull it out. And also, hey, we've got a very special guest, NFL picker with us today. The one and only Biggie Short, former Chase High defensive lineman, current Chase Middle offensive line coach. Defensive line coach. My bad. But he's in the house. So Biggie, let's hear your pick. Panthers, Green Bay.
Gotta go with the home team, Panthers. 20-10 Panthers. Sorry, Aaron Rodgers.
Cleveland, Jacksonville. 2 words. Brian Hoyer.
Yeah, I picked Jacksonville last week, and they kind of let me down, so I can't do that again. Plus, the Browns kind of made me look stupid too, so I can't pick against them again. Got to go with Brian Hoyer and Ben Tate, who is playing really well. He's on my fantasy team, so shout out to him. Got to go with the Browns.
Same here, the Browns. Cameron, you better get 2 touchdowns, fantasy team, baby.
Lions, Saints. Friday, this one's for you. We're talking about the Saints finally. But I think I'm going to go with the Lions here. I just like their defense, man. Their defense is just absolutely filthy. Even without Megatron, I think their defense can shut down the Saints offense. There's too many question marks for the Saints right now. Really think the Saints are missing Darren Sproles a lot. I like the Lions in like a 21-17 type game.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Saints there. Like you said, no Megatron, no win for me. I just don't see, the Saints, even though their record doesn't show it, they have talent. They have, in my opinion, the most underrated quarterback in the league. I think he's top 3 for sure. Drew Brees, I think he gets it done. And I don't think, I could be wrong on this, but I think that even though Jimmy Graham is questionable for this game, I still think that they just find a way. The Saints aren't as bad as their record shows, and I think they'll show people that.
Going with the Lions, Golden Tate. He's going to step up big time. Last year they didn't have him. They don't have Megatron, so might as well go with Golden Tate and Eric Ebron if he can get some touches. He was good at North Carolina. Big target for North Carolina last year. I think they're missing him this year in University of North Carolina, but gotta go with the Lions.
Falcons, Ravens. Falcons defense can't stop anybody. Flacco has another big game. Ravens.
I'm going with the upset here. I think the Falcons, again, I think they're better than their record shows. Yes, their defense hasn't played that well, but I'm going to go with the upset here. That'll be my upset pick, if you will. Matty Ice gets it done. I'll say 13-14.
I'm going with the Falcons. Matty Ice, and comes down to it, he's playing one heck of a season compared to last year. Got Julio Jones back and Ronnie White. Can't go wrong with there. It's an upset.
Giants, Cowboys. I'm staying with my dude DeMarco Murray. Cowboys roll.
Again on this pick, I picked the Giants last week. They made me look kind of dumb. I picked against the Cowboys, and they showed me up too. So I can't pick against the Cowboys again. I think DeMarco Murray runs for 100 yards again, and I think that Tony Romo does just enough, and that defense stays on the sidelines where they belong, and the Cowboys get it done.
Going with the Cowboys, but Eli Manning's going to have a great game. I hate to say it, but he's having a good season this year. Everybody put him down. But the Cowboys, like you said, DeMarco Murray, can't go wrong with him. I have him on my fantasy team. So, and Dez Bryant, making catches like he does, can't go wrong.
Sunday Night Football. Broncos, Niners. 2 words again. Peyton Manning. Can't pick against him.
again, I will disagree. I think you can pick against Peyton Manning, and I will do just that. Another upset pick, if you will. The Niners are playing pretty good. You know, they have had their struggles early. They're starting to click. Kaepernick is starting to actually play good. Whether you like him or not, I personally do not. But you can't discount what he did last game, and I just think that, you know, they get it done. I think that Peyton Manning has 3 touchdowns and gets his record. But I think they lose 24-27.
Well, Peyton Manning is going to get the record, but the 49ers will win this game. Just saying. Upset pit again. I mean, Colin Kaepernick, and I like Alex Smith a whole lot better than Colin Kaepernick, but you see what Alex Smith did to the Broncos. You see what the defense done. And I believe the Chiefs should beat them, but hey, Peyton Manning did his thing. Might as well go for the 49ers.
And the Monday night game, Texans-Steelers. Going with the big guy, J.J. Watt. I think he's going to have another touchdown, calling a pick six and a reception touchdown in the red zone. I love J.J. Watt. I think Clowney might be coming back this week. They're starting to hear rumblings about that. Steelers are just too inconsistent for me. Going with the Texans.
You said the point that is going to be my point to why I'm taking the Steelers. These Steelers are inconsistent. And so what did they do? They go and lose. So now it's time for the Steelers to do what the Steelers do in their inconsistent state and win a game. I think Big Ben bounces back and has a good game. And I don't think the Texans are that good. I don't believe in Ryan Fitzpatrick. I mean, they have J.J. Watt, but other than that, their defense is playing pretty good. I mean, and I'm going with the Steelers again. Hopefully, my boy Taylor's team will not make me look stupid again. I'm picking them for you, so if they lose, it's your fault.
Going with the Texans because of J.J. Watt on the defensive side, but because of Aaron Foster. I mean, he's went off the past 2 games since he's been back. Had 2 touchdowns last week, which killed me in fantasy football. I mean, playing against him. But, I mean, Ryan Fitzpatrick, he's not the greatest quarterback, but he's playing all right for them to win 3 games so far. But Aaron Foster's going to carry the load, and J.J. Watt's going to, like you said, score no touchdown.
That's all we have for tonight. In one word, how's your fantasy team doing? What's their record? Mine's 3-3.
I have several, but the main one I'm counting on is 4-2 in my uncle's league, and so I got to go beat Julie this week, get the job done for my boys. I think she's projected to beat me right now, but she doesn't know what's going to hit her. I think I've got a team that can beat her, and so I think I improved to 5-2 this week, and all is well. All is well.
Biggie, how's your fantasy team?
Terrible.
Terrible. Guys, thanks again for listening. This is TNM Sports. We're out.